Welcome to Tribe Talk, everyone. You're here with Laura Neal
and Rachel Evans.
And today we're talking about how you can advocate for your child at school if they're having difficulties without feeling like you're being difficult.
For children who've experienced trauma, school can be quite difficult for them, and for parents and carers, being called into school meetings can also bring up difficulties as well. So in today's episode, we're going to share some insights into how you can advocate for support for your child whilst working in partnership with school.
So Rachel, what types of things do we see going on for our children in schools?
Yeah, so the main ones really, or the ones that stand out, are when children are being aggressive in school. So parents called in when classrooms are trashed. If they're disrupting a lesson, that's another reason why maybe parents get called in quite a lot.
And it can be low or higher level disruption as well, from my experience. Sometimes it can be quite low level, like a child being out of their seat and wandering around, but actually that's disrupting the rest of the class.
Yeah, or even a child that's continually calling out, which disrupts the teacher's flow in the lesson. So that comes up quite a lot. Sometimes children that are having difficulties maybe with their TA or being overbearing towards their TA, that can bring up some concerns for schools and for teachers.
Yeah.
Children that are leaving the classroom regularly.
That's a big one, leaving the classroom.
Yeah, especially for, I suppose I'd say younger and older children really, because you don't know where they are, and then that prompts a big search party then for the child, like where are they, what are they doing, are they still in school grounds, have they left school grounds, that just, it creates so much worry.
There's also anxiety then, and that can either look like withdrawal, or it can look like a child who is seeking too much interaction or too much attention. Because they're anxious, they need the engagement from other people, so they seek that from either their peers or quite often from a TA or a teacher. That can be excessive within the classroom then.
So essentially it's like we've just covered a couple of different examples, but it's anything that is disrupting the classroom flow, or the class the way that the teacher is teaching, so whether that child is being disruptive in lessons or whether they're leaving the lesson, again it's just causing this disruption or disconnect between what the teacher is trying to do in class, and then you've got this one child that is in their eyes causing a lot of chaos, because a lot of the attention then goes on to that young person, isn't it? And that's when parents get called in, carers get called in, and we're calling big meetings, getting all agencies involved to try and fix this problem. So I guess that's where our episode has come from. This is a common problem that we see when consulting with families. School difficulties.
And actually it's something that's coming up more and more and more often. When we look back maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, we did not have as many school difficulties being referred to us as we do now, and it feels like every other child that we're working with, there is some type of school need as well that we're asked to support with.
And we're not really going to cover school refusal, so children refusing to go to school in the morning. We're not even going to cover that in this really. But it's more about school difficulties actually on premises, isn't it? In classrooms, in the canteen, playtimes. These difficulties are coming up time and time again, which schools are finding difficult to manage.
And difficulties in being able to engage in the work and then get an education.
And children who have experienced trauma, when they already have delays in certain aspects of their development, not accessing an education becomes problematic for them.
Very problematic, and I feel like every episode we refer back to complex trauma, but if you're thinking about that complex trauma and that it's multi-layered, if you start adding in there as well non-engagement in school, that adds another layer on top of that again. So we want to make sure that our children have every opportunity to engage in as much education as they can.
I think it's so important, making those links to the experiences that children have had previously, So that gives further insight to us as to how to start supporting the child and fix the problem, because it's not a great feeling for parents and carers. So in consultations, when I'm working with parents and carers and they're reporting back to me that we're having difficulties in school, or I got called the other day and there was another meeting, or I had to go and pick my son or my daughter up early because they're being so disruptive, that just causes so much, it adds so much pressure to home life, and so much worry, because your child's on accessing education and they're also home a lot, so they're not doing a lot of learning, they're not seeing their friends, and you have to then manage or work with or support your child for the entire day, when they're experiencing some of these difficulties as well.
And I think the additional pressures that adds to a family, for one, they're really concerned about their child, but then there might be additional pressures like, I can't go to work because I have to care for my child at home, which brings in those financial pressures, those family pressures as well. So anything that we can do to support this is going to be beneficial, not just to the child but the family as a whole.
Yeah, the knock-on effect is massive. So in today's episode, we want to start to unpack some of this, so understand some of those difficulties, talk about them, because I don't think we talk about them enough.
No.
And parents thinking that it's only them that's experiencing this, that's going through this, so their child's not going to school, or they're coming home from school early, or they're the only ones being disruptive. It's a common issue that we come up against, or support families through that. But how we can work together with school to see what support is available. So whether that is looking at the child's timetable, looking at those key individuals that are present in the classroom environment, like what can we do that can support the child's access and education like their peers, and what questions that we can be asking school to start those conversations off.
So what we need to remember with children who've experienced trauma is that children can't learn if they don't feel safe. So if they're trying their best to protect themselves because they don't feel safe within an environment, all of their energy will be diverted somewhere else. And I'm sure as adults we can appreciate that if we've had moments of high anxiety, I've definitely done this in a car where I'm feeling a bit anxious and I've ended up driving somewhere else that I shouldn't. And it's a little bit like that for our children when they're in education. There might be lots going on around them, lots of learning opportunities, but if they don't feel safe, if they're feeling anxious, they're not going to be able to take any of that in because their brain is in a place where that information can be processed. So trauma can have an impact on so many things. It can have an impact on development. So to begin with, our children who've experienced trauma in the school environment may be quite a bit behind their peers because their development has been impacted by trauma. It can have an impact on things like memory, their ability to concentrate, their ability to sit and just engage with a lesson, as well as all of those other things that we've talked about in terms of feeling safe, and in terms of relationships as well. So you might have children in your class and they can behave completely differently. So children who've experienced trauma and almost withdraw from relationships, and then children who've experienced trauma who must be near somebody all the time. There's often those relationship difficulties, so there's so many different ways that you might be seeing this present within the school environment.
So then that brings up the conversation around some of those traditional school-wide, class-wide systems that might bring up some difficulties for our children that have experienced trauma. So things that I'm thinking about are those strategies that are sanction-based. So behaviour points for, let's just call this bad behaviour. Exclusions. Sent to the head teacher's office for different reasons. Like some of these strategies can sometimes make the problem worse.
And this is, for me, this is where you really need to understand behavioural science, because it can tell you what is going to make it better and what is going to make it worse. So a lot of the time for our children who've experienced trauma, things like exclusions are going to make the situation worse, because that's another rejection. But one, it can be another rejection, or if they're really struggling with the school environment and finding it difficult to engage, all exclusion does is lets them escape from that environment. So you're either reinforcing that difficult behaviour in school by saying you can go home, or you're just not giving them that opportunity to engage because of the exclusion. So it doesn't work either way. But then other things like then behaviour points. This is where you really need to understand behavioural science to know what will work for children who've experienced trauma, or any child actually, but specifically for children who've experienced trauma, because focusing on negative behaviour and we're going to give you points when you do something wrong is definitely not something that's going to teach them any skills or help them in the future. So there's so many... I think, we could go into that so much. There's so much we could talk about there. But there's lots of these traditional systems that we use which just don't work for traumatised children.
And especially the feelings of shame that come along with that. So giving a child that's experienced trauma a behaviour point, like you've done this wrong or you've made this mistake, just elicits those feelings of I'm not good enough, I'm a bad person, I've messed up again. And then we're back into this cycle where, school's not a safe place for me. So it's about when we're looking at strategies to support children in school, we need to look at what's going to work for them, what's going to be effective, what do we know about their trauma history, and how do we use that to build upon our intervention and our strategy. While
also considering what will work for the school as well, and that is a key consideration, because we also have to remember that the average classroom has around 30 children in. So we can individualise things as much as we can for one child, but actually we need a school-wide approach, because there's 30 children in that classroom, and the one... so it might be your child that is actually having difficulties, but there'll be more than one child in that class who's experienced some type of trauma, and being trauma informed at a school-wide level can work really well.
And even from the other side of things as well, when we've consulted with schools and within classrooms, we have to design something that's going to be manageable for the teacher to do. Otherwise, it's not going to be implemented. Design our intervention that's going to be really easy for that.
We have to be realistic, don't we? There's no point in having all of these unrealistic expectations that actually this child needs all this long list of things that just cannot happen in a traditional school environment. You have to be realistic with it as well.
And from some of the school consultations that I've done, making some of these small tweaks with some of the systems that are already in place in school can make a massive difference. So we're not going in then with this like one intervention for this one child. We can do something from like a whole school or a whole class approach, but the other children can in points of positive behaviour. That's something that's quite easy for a teacher to implement.
To flip it round, so instead of that negativity, it's more positivity, and just some of those simple things that can be put in place.
They can be really effective. So we're individualising something for that can be accessed class-wide as well.
And one of the things that we always look at when we're supporting any family is how do we make this as simple as possible? What's the simplest form of intervention we can pick? But I think that then becomes doubly important when you're working with schools, because of the amount of things going on there and the amount of children that they're working with on a day-to-day basis.
If anyone's listening right now and your child is struggling in school, the first thing that we've got to look at, we just got to sort of unpick the problem, haven't we? So looking at the trauma that the child's experienced, and then what difficulties are we seeing in schools? What behaviours are we seeing? Are they finding some subjects really hard? We've got to unpick that problem, and that's our starting point.
getting down to basics of what is it that's not quite working for them.
Yeah, and sometimes that takes a little bit of time, but it's all about learning more about the problem and making sure that we are considering then the trauma that the child's experienced to make sure that our intervention, our strategy isn't re-traumatising as well. So yeah, if your child is experiencing any difficulties in school, the first thing that we've got to do is start to unpick that problem.
So we're going to look at a quick case example to walk us through some of the things we might be looking at. So we're going to think about Liam. So Liam is age 9, so he's in junior school. Yeah. And Liam lives with his mum. And in the past, Liam has experienced domestic violence between mum and dad, and care wasn't completely consistent in the past. And mum is really aware of that. She wants Liam to have the best now. So mum and dad have separated. Liam just lives with mum now. And things are good at home. So he's described as funny, engaging, he enjoys home life, has good time with his mum, and they've got a good relationship. So things at home are fairly good. But in school he's having some difficulties. So he has difficulty concentrating in class, and he can be a bit disruptive with that as well. If he's ever told that he's done something not necessarily wrong, but got something wrong or corrected in any of the work that he's doing, he can become quite heightened, and there are times when he's been aggressive and thrown things around the classroom or approached peers as if he's going to be aggressive towards them. So he's often in trouble for disrupting lessons, refusing to do work, and this seems to be escalating within school. So teachers have called mum into school to have a discussion around that. Yeah, and there's two things that you said there that just made me think that whenever we're describing these children, they've got lots to offer. Yeah. The academic potential is there. It's just that we've got some of these barriers to learning that cause so much of a problem for these children, and for me, a practitioner listening to that, it's so sad because I can see these children, they've got so much potential, and it's just we've got to crack some of this like aggression and some of these difficulties within the class, but again, it's such a common issue, isn't it, that we come up against, where there's just some of these difficulties in class that are causing so much of a problem. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, we know that Liam is engaging in some challenging behaviour, and we've got to get to the bottom of that, haven't we? So what is going on in the classroom that's making him engage in some of these aggressive behaviours? So what is triggering that? How are the adults or children around responding? Yeah, so some information has already come up in the information that we've heard. So we heard that whenever he gets something wrong, he becomes heightened. So we've got that social disapproval there, haven't we? And this is something we see really often with children who've experienced trauma. They can't cope with any social disapproval at all. So even being told they need to correct something tiny, or they could have done something a little differently, they have a big response to that. Yeah. So I'd want to know a little bit more about that if I was asking school about what was happening there. Yeah. We also need to consider, are there times when the environment is louder? So are there times when the teacher raises her voice or when peers are shouting? Because we know there's a history of domestic violence. What does that mean for him if voices are raised? Yeah. Could it be that that's triggering something for him? Yeah. So we need to think around that as well. They've said that he can't concentrate. Asking more questions around that. What does that look like? That's our favourite question, isn't it? Yeah. What does that look like? Yeah, tell me what it looks like. Tell me what that looks like. So is it around, so this comes up so much, is it around a particular subject? So we often see children who, they might have, for example, PE or art, and they're really good at that, but all of a sudden it's the more academic stuff, and they just cannot concentrate. But they can concentrate in other areas. So that tells me that it's not so much a concentration problem, it's a work-based problem. And we need to look at how that task is being communicated and what they're being asked to do, because it's not a lack of concentration, it's a lack of concentration for that specific task. Or it could be
that it's a particular time of day that, you know, do you see more engagement in the morning and then less as the afternoon progresses, you know, after lunch? So it's really unpicking like when is he struggling to concentrate, and is there anything around those times that we can that we can look at to support a bit more.
So something we introduce fairly often is making sure, because most schools have snack time now, but for a child who's experienced trauma, that they do have their snack at snack time, because they can be hypersensitive to food and how much food they've had through the day. Towards the end of the day, they're going to be more tired, so might not be able to engage as well. It's these little things, but then the bigger thing, a bigger picture of what is it that we're asking them to do, when are we seeing these difficulties? Is it around certain peers as well? There can be certain peers that they just don't gel with, and then that peer can trigger something from them, and they can trigger something from that peer, and you can get into a whole cycle with children sometimes.
But it becomes really insightful and really important that whenever we're doing any work like this, that we go to school and we're observing the classroom situation and how then Liam is interacting with the work that's being presented, and with his peers, his teacher. It's looking at that bigger picture to understand the problem, because there's lots of different symptoms of that problem that we're seeing that's making it difficult for Liam.
And a lot of it comes back to function again, and we haven't spoken about function for a couple of podcasts now, but looking at the function of why the child is presenting like that. So why is that behaviour happening? And if we can pin that back and look at that, then we know how to support, essentially. Something that does get reported fairly often by schools and can become a problem are, not necessarily in Liam's case, I don't think this has come up for him, but children who require a lot of attention or interaction from their TA or their teacher, sometimes their peers, but it's usually an adult within the class, isn't it? And just the amount of times they're putting their hand up or they're asking for support is becoming a problem, because that person's time might be shared across multiple children. And with that, again, that question would come up, what does that look like? Because we'd really want to know more about how that looks, because that is something that can be fairly easily managed if you know why it's happening and what it looks like, with what we call antecedent strategies. So before the problem happens, you're using a strategy to combat that problem. So questions like that are questions that we'd advise any parent or carer asks. Now, you might not have the luxury of going into a school and being able to observe, but asking these types of questions around what's going on, what it looks like, is really important.
Because we've actually spoken about, in Liam's case, to be honest, lots of different difficulties that he's experiencing, but lots of potential explanations for some of these difficulties. And it's not until we start asking those questions and unpicking the problem, we're not going to get to the solution. We need to understand a little bit better. So asking those questions are really important. So when you are presented with some problems like that, so if your child's experiencing difficulties in school, it's upsetting first off, isn't it, and worrying, because you're getting called in constantly, you don't know what to do, you're trying to have these conversations at the school gate or at the school door when there's lots of other things that are going on, and you feel like you're failing as a parent. Especially some of the parents and carers I've worked with, they just feel really defeated. But all of this can feel like a bit of a minefield, and you don't know what to do to support. Where do you go next? But like you were saying just now, Laura, it's all about with the questions that you're asking and understanding the problem a bit more. So when you are going to school and you're having meetings with teachers, I think the best thing is to call a meeting really with the teacher or the ALNCO, that key person that's going to be able to hold that meeting and have those discussions. But you want to be understanding what is particularly problematic. So what are they finding difficult about your child's behaviour? So is it that he's leaving lessons, or engaging in some low-level disruption, which is interrupting the flow of the lesson.
Yeah.
You want to be asking those types of questions.
Yeah.
What does this behaviour look like?
What does it look like? Is there anything that you can pinpoint that could be triggering this as well? So asking those questions, because those are, I think, if you have to have outside professionals come in, and those are the first questions they'll be asking. What does it look like? Is there anything that's triggering? So thinking about those initially.
Yeah, and also you want to be asking, like, what strategies are currently in place? Already in place. So class teachers are really good at having class-wide systems. So they have behaviour points, but are we focusing on positive behaviour? Looking at those class-wide or even school-wide systems to understand a little bit more about
how they work,
how they work and what behaviours are we reinforcing.
And also, I think how they work and how they work in general, but how are they working for my child? So what is my child seeing from those systems that are in place? How often do they access them? Are they using them? So recently I have had conversations with a mum whose child had their school had put in a sensory station so they could go and have some sensory interaction. But actually, when I asked the question, the child wasn't using it at all.
Right.
So if you were just talking about what's in place, yes, that is in place, but actually it's not used. So then it's not actually working for that child for whatever reason. It's good to know it's there, but we've got to know how it's used as well.
Yeah, so it's about having an understanding of what those strategies look like and how is your child responding to those strategies. Like, is it working or isn't it working, or have we got something that is kind of working, but with a couple of tweaks we can make it a little bit more effective. But I find with those types of questions, just understanding current circumstances, that for me as a behaviour analyst, I'm then thinking, okay, what is within our scope here to where can we make tweaks, because some things are off the table completely, just based off of like logistics and the day-to-day running of the school, like ATA leaving the lesson and spending one-to-one time. That might be impossible for the school or the class to even implement, but when we ask those questions, but like, okay, this is actually possible, where we could put in some one-to-one time, or when the child is asking for a break, there's actually some time or someone that they can do that with. So those questions are always good to understand what is currently in place and how is your child responding, what can we work with. But also lots of schools have TAs, so teaching assistants or learning support assistants. They're called different things in different schools, but is that TA accessed by all children, or is that for one child? So is it that does your child have that one key individual that provides those feelings of safety and trust?
So someone they trust and they can go to when they, not necessarily all of the time when they need to, but they know that person is there that they can talk to. It might be the beginning of the day, end of the day, in between lessons. It might be in lessons, but they know it's that one person.
And do we need to build in that time, And again, it's like knowing who is the class teacher, but also, have you got anybody else in your class that comes in? Have you got like a key person that covers PPA when the teacher is not in the class, when they're spending their time planning? Like, all of those are important questions to ask to know what your child's day or week even looks like.
A question that I always ask as well is, what does the class routine look like? That's so critical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because sometimes even by just looking at the routine, we can pinpoint why a certain point of day isn't working for a particular child. And it might be a simple tweak that does make it work.
Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier about lessons and work, asking questions around, do you know any subject that my child particularly enjoys, or what are they really good at? Because that's where you can start then providing that level of reinforcement, because they're good at that, or they enjoy that more. Let's start there. Let's build more of that lesson time in so they can contact some success.
And where are you not seeing these difficulties, essentially?
Because they're all good starting points, because we want a starting point and then build on that. So the child is contacting more success with class, with school, with completing work, any work really. But once you start with that, you can see that then going into other subjects and other lessons.
Yeah. So those are some of the questions that can get you started. It's definitely not everything that we might cover. I think we could talk about interventions in schools probably forever. But those are some of the things you can start to ask to get you started, and to know that you're on the right page when parenting or supporting a child who's experienced trauma. But we've actually got a question here as well, Rachel, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your view on this. So what about children in secondary school? So secondary school often looks really different. How do you get all teachers working in the same direction and on the same page when there's multiple teachers, multiple different classrooms, multiple different subjects? It is a different ball game. So what would be your advice on getting everyone on the same page?
It's definitely a different level of complexity, because children are not in one classroom. They actually walk around the school, and they go to different buildings and to go to different subjects. But what I would be suggesting is, when we talk about calling that meeting, having that meeting with a key individual. So that might be the person who's taking the lead for your child's year. So that could be a form tutor, a year lead, or ALN core pastoral support, someone that is looking at education and well-being for your child's year, and starting the discussions with them, because this is something that we definitely do when we're consulting in secondary school. We might go in or we definitely will go in and do some observations if that's possible, but having the consultation with that key person, so we can ask those questions, provide those strategies, and then that person can distribute that advice then to the teachers that teach your son or daughter.
And that's really important, isn't it, is distribution of that information, because there's no good in secondary school everyone who's in the meeting agreeing and knowing what's going on. It has to be distributed across all of those teachers that are supporting.
Or definitely those teachers that are that your child is finding that lesson more difficult. They're the people that need to hear that information the most.
And I think within secondary school as well, we almost have to be more flexible within our approach, because lessons are so different. They're in different rooms, different buildings, completely different setup in terms of what's expected. So we do often have to think outside the box a little bit more, and that might be something to ask school. How can we think outside the box on this? How can we try to make this work for my child?
And I would say just recently working with some schools in our local area, they've been particularly flexible around how a child's timetable could even look, for example. So they're definitely open to those conversations and coming from a place of let's find some we can meet in the middle to put some support in place that works best for your child, but also fits in with our school day as well. Okay, so that's the end of our podcast. So our key takeaway from today's episode: the next time that you have a phone call like this from school and the worry and the panic starts to set in, just stop, take a step back and think about the questions that you should be asking school to get a better understanding of some of the difficulties that your child's experiencing, and how you can together support your child. So thank you for joining our episode today. If you want more information about trauma-informed care in practice, then subscribe to Tribe Talk.